our restaurant group has 4 restaurants plus a 5th licensed restaurant. Over the years, I've had my senior management team grow with me. So I have employees that have been with me 20 years from the very beginning. 15 to 20 years is my senior management team. That's
the beginning.
Yeah, that's the beginning. So that's 5 core people that were with me for a very long time. Those are the ones that get rewarded in my mind first because they were along for the ride. Sweat equity over the years. And so starting with restaurant number 2 is when I started to include those senior members with allowing them to invest. My logic was, why am I, on average, I take 2 investors per restaurant. Why should I get money from an outside, uninvolved participant versus an employee who might be able to get some money to invest from their parents or grandparents or family money? And so I started that process and matching them with, okay, let's say you bought enough to own 5% and you have equity. Well, the sweat equity takes you to another 5%, almost like a matching. So now I started creating partners within our group.
Yes.
So all ships start to rise.
This episode is brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, President and CEO of Tahoe Restaurant Group, Ray Villaman. My man, Ray, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Absolutely. Loving life.
Beautiful. I can't wait to dive in. So you are here because Dan over at Wally said you gotta make a trip. You're close enough to Tahoe to make the 2-hour, hour-and-a-half trip over there to get Ray on the show. Just so you know, he said amazing things about you. He's really inspired by you and the work you do. And I can't wait to dive into who you are and how you got to where you are today. In my 1 hour of research, man, holy moly, we have a lot to cover. We have a lot to cover. I thought originally I was like, oh, you only owns 4 restaurants. This will be easy. Man, you've been busy for a long time.
Very fortunate with my career. A lot of stories. If you want them, I got them.
Oh man, I cannot wait to dive in. Before we do dive in and find out who you are and how you got to where you are today, let's get that motivational, inspirational, ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
I would tell you that all management teams, including my own, need focus and simplification of any business philosophy or mantra. And internally, we use hire right, train right, treat right.
Hire right, train right, treat right. I love that, man. Dive into it.
Well, it starts with being very selective. I mean, every company I know says they want to hire the best. But what is the process that the applicants go through to ensure that you're filtering for the best? And it's about taking a long time to make a hire. But on the flip side of that, you want to fire quickly when you have a bad fit.
Right.
So take a long time to bring somebody in the doors, make them understand and learn your culture and interaction with your management team and even fellow employees. But when somebody's not a fit, do yourself a favor, move on quickly.
Got it.
And then on the train right, once you're on board, we want restaurants to make huge investments in their people. So before they go solo on the floor, they're thoroughly trained with extreme detail as to how the restaurant ideally operates. And then the final component is treat them right, and that's treating your people right. Most restaurants start with the guest.
Right.
We believe you start with the team.
Yes.
Because when you start with the team, that transfers to the guests. When you got a server that loves coming into the workplace, enjoys their fellow
when they treat
coworkers.
it like they own it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the guests respond to that. They see it in the employees' eyes.
Absolutely. And I think, honestly, if I'm reflecting on the industry, I think it's the treat them right where we mostly get it wrong. And I think that's when I say inspire, empower, and transform the industry. Really, for me, it's about treating people right. and getting to the point where, you know, this is a career for people, and there's an abundance amount of opportunity and security in this industry. So that's really what we're trying to do. So take me to the beginning, man. Where does it make sense to start sharing your story? Going all the way back to the 90s, I think, right?
So like most college-age adults, you don't really know what you want to do with your life, or what direction should a career take. And getting through college, I waited tables and I bussed tables. My first job was a busboy, and it was for Bennigan's back in Houston, Texas. And I owe it to them to learning how the chains put in systems in restaurants. But while I was there, I loved the social life. Restaurants are very social. And I was fortunate to go through each and every position in the restaurant, working for them while I attended college.
Okay. So where'd you start? Like, were you like a busser?
I was a busser. Started off as a busser, quickly graduated up to a server. Next stage was bartender. And bartending back in the 80s, we're talking late 80s, was the prize position in a restaurant because the tips were the highest. And you didn't have to run around the restaurant. And the way I entered into the kitchen was during a lunch shift. I go to the kitchen expo line to pick up food for one of my guests, and I noticed the assistant manager fighting with one of the line cooks.
Okay.
And they're screaming at each other and in each other's face, and I quickly run between them and say, "Hey guys, let's chill out. We got a lunch rush going." And the line cook takes off his apron and throws it in the manager's face and walks out. And the manager looks like, you know, he's in shock. And he says, "Hey, Ray, can you cover and watch the front of the house? I'm going to go into the kitchen." I was like, "You're not going into the kitchen. Let me go into the kitchen. Like, we need you out here." And he's like, "You would do that?" And so that was my entry into the kitchen world, being thrown onto the fry hotline in the middle of a shift.
So in all these different roles that you were working, what was the one thing at this point in your career in the 80s, were you like all in? Like, is this what you wanted to do, or are you still thinking this is just what I'm going to do for now?
This is my summer job while I'm trying to make money to go back to college.
Did this? You said it was Bennigan's, correctly?
Bennigan's.
So, at some point at Bennigan's, do you say this might be what I want to do? Did you fall in love with it, or was it strictly just the social aspect?
Social aspect.
Okay.
Making money and social.
Is there any huge lesson for you during this time, or should we keep going? Because we got a lot of career to cover.
So, just the life lesson is enjoy. You want to make sure you're with a company where you enjoy coming into work, enjoy the work atmosphere. Restaurants take a bad rap for screaming chefs and unruly owners that are hungover from the night before, whatever. Make sure you work for good people.
Right. So when did you start living more intentionally and thinking to yourself, this might be my path?
So I graduated from college in '89.
Okay.
And then, like anybody, I go to job fairs. I'm like, I'm not sure what I want to do.
Right.
I got a degree in political science and a minor in physics. I thought I wanted to go to law school, but by that time I was burnt out on school.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I probably wasn't qualified for law school.
Why not?
Didn't have the grades. I was very social in college.
Yeah.
I viewed college as just a blast. It was a
Right.
fun time. And so I go to my first job fair, and the companies that were most interested in my resume, now you got to remember my resume includes mostly just restaurant work, and they invited me into management. They go, "You got a degree, you've got supervisory experience, you've worked every position of a restaurant. We want you."
Yeah. I don't think people give themselves enough credit for working in the restaurants and how much that galvanizes you. The restaurant industry is a hard place to be successful.
Correct.
If you're good at this work, if you have a talent for being able to literally just morph on the spot in a tune to the table you're at, or to be able to pivot and work front of house and then go work back of house and then go work behind the bar. Like, not everybody can do that. The amount of skill set you need to be that adaptable, we don't give ourselves enough credit.
Not at all. And you know, as we dive into some of the challenges and successes in this industry, I've been able to boil it down into 4 critical areas of the attributes and the skill set that people need to be successful in the restaurant
business.
What are
those 4 critical areas?
Well, we're jumping ahead, which is fine with me.
Maybe a little teaser. Just
so
those areas.
So the 4 critical pillars that you must build on in order to be successful, in my opinion. First, everybody knows location, 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 but not location by itself is critical. It's how you negotiate a lease.
Okay.
So how many times have you heard a mom and pop story saying, we love cooking, we love food, we're going to open up our own restaurant? What experience level do they have with site selection and negotiating a lease?
Not any.
Most independents don't even have a concept of what asking for tenant improvement dollars
They don't have the language. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to speak. They don't know what to look for, what to ask for, how to talk.
Exactly. They don't have the budget to go get a lawyer that's experienced with lease negotiations.
Or a broker.
And so
brokers I think are free.
And so locations are identifying and negotiating the proper lease is critical.
Right.
That's one leg of the 4-legged stool.
Yeah, and just stay surface level like that, because we're going to unpackage these later when we get to the current time.
And then second is concept. So I've had plenty of people approach me and saying, I want to get into the restaurant business. I hear you're the man to talk to. I could really use some guidance. And the first topic that they always want to talk about is their concept. And I try to reshape the conversation and ask first and foremost how they chose that concept. So let's say you're going into an area with an Italian restaurant.
I feel like I need to stop you because I want to save a teaser. I want to leave some
juicy
for later. Yeah.
Okay.
So right now we have location, concept. What's the third one?
Third one is probably my biggest priority for people that ask me what's needed: management experience. And with management experience, that should include your ability to set up systems for your people to follow. So the biggest reason for failure in our industry is the dentist that sells his practice and says, I have a love of food, I'm getting into restaurants. No experience managing and understanding how restaurants should work.
Right.
No training ground.
Right. What's the fourth?
Capital. Capital is essential to sustaining your payroll as you're building your business, as your sales are growing, hopefully. It's the oxygen your business needs in order to survive the first critical months, but then to thrive, whether it's through marketing or, et cetera.
So those 4 pillars, again, are location, concept, management, experience, and capital. We are definitely coming back to that. Going back to your timeline, you were identified as somebody who has management experience, and people wanted you for management. That's where, with this job fair, that's where you were. So what was next for you?
So next for me was, okay, I can dive in. I got to make money. I got to survive and pay my bills.
Right.
Which restaurant group should I go with? That was the big burning question. And I'm very curious by nature, so I started researching and studying. If I'm going to work for a restaurant chain, I want to work for the best. I want to work for somebody that's growing. I want to work for a company that has opportunity. And at the time, serendipitously, I happened to be walking through a mall in Atlanta, Georgia, and we came across the second, I believe it was the second or third California pizza kitchen in the country.
Wow, second or third?
Yeah. So I think it was number 2.
How many did they open a total at one
Couple
point?
hundred.
Wow. So you got in real early.
Yeah, got in real early and fell in love with the product. And of course you want to love the product that you're representing and selling. And I joined them and they started training me in Chicago, Illinois, at their locations up there.
Okay. So what was it about your decision making that made you want to go corporate?
It wasn't so much, corporate versus independent. My logic was, where's the greatest stability in terms of income generation for myself? I viewed independence as nice and family oriented, but I needed to learn the business. I wanted to learn from the best.
Right. I was just going to say, like when I first started this podcast, I was all about trying to teach the mom and pops of the world what the big companies know, right? And I was really trying to move try to level the playing field. So like if you were passionate about food and beverage, you wanted to open your own restaurant, you had the skills and the resources available to you to compete with big guys. And I wouldn't really, I try to avoid talking to the big operations, but the more I started getting into it, the more I started realizing that a lot of these giant big corporations aren't evil. And if anything, to attract onto yourself the people you need to scale, you need to be growing. You need opportunity, like you need to create opportunity for others. The only way you can do that is by growing. So I think you were spot on to go with a company that was young, that was growing, because that's where all the opportunity is.
Exactly. In addition, it's what has brought me to where I am today. Our Tahoe Restaurant Group is a cross section of taking the best elements from the chain world and the best elements from the independent world. So you got the family, know each other's name and siblings and deep relationships in the community, but we have the chain mentality of how to run a business efficiently, productively, with systems.
Right.
So it's a combination of the two that we have found our sweet spot.
I love that. I think we'll probably unpackage that more later. So you land on California Kitchen. They send you up to Chicago to do the training. At this point in your career, this is 91, correct?
I believe it was 91. Yeah, sorry, it's been a while.
It has been a while, over 30 years. It's incredible. So were you thinking to yourself, this is what I want to do, this is my path, I'm going to be a restaurant professional?
Not at all. I was focused on how do I get promoted, how do I learn as much as I possibly can, and keep growing.
Did you have an internal goal with California Kitchen? Like, did you want to get to a certain point?
Initially, it was I wanted to be the general manager.
Okay.
And then once you reach that, you want the next level. But, I moved around with California Pizza Kitchen for a couple of years. I opened up a store in St. Louis. I then went to Virginia and then Bethesda, Maryland, and then eventually transferred out to California to be with my future wife.
Okay. This is all with California?
This is all with California Pizza Kitchen. And I loved the core group that I worked with. My coworkers were just phenomenal, so engaged with the excitement of opening restaurants. We had this core team that we just thought we could accomplish anything together.
So that's what you're mostly doing, is traveling, going, and like being what I would call a culture carrier, right? You're going to that new location, you're bringing a team with you, and you're setting the standard from day one with this opening team. Is that what's happening?
That's pretty accurate. At the time, you don't necessarily realize that's what they're utilizing you for, but they were looking for the people with the strongest work ethic, the best attitudes, right? Coachability.
Setting that standard from day one.
And so we thought we were special, right? Like, you're on the opening team, and and they made us feel that way.
That's important, though. It's people. I probably reference Maslow's hierarchy of needs way too often, but we already talked about the importance of growth. We talked about the importance of security and stability. We also talked. Now we're getting into the significance of being seen. All those things are so important. Like, you can't just take your people for granted. You have to build them up. You have to make them feel special. And it sounds like they did that.
And I think it was more organic than it was intentional. I think restaurant owners need to be intentional. And that's one of the biggest things that's missing from our industry is if I have, for example, currently I think I have 30 managers, salaried managers. Where do we give them professional development, both internally and externally? Where are they learning from?
I mean,
there's no restaurant I mean, there's hospitality schools, but those are highly academic.
Let's say those who come before them.
Those who come before them. But my bigger point is we should really, as an industry, start thinking about an outsourced complement to their professional development.
An outsourced complement to their professional development.
So I would love to be able to find a company that I could send my assistant managers a week to receive management soft skills such as progressive discipline training, proper termination of employee training.
You know, I don't know these gentlemen well, but through interviewing many of their, I don't know how you would even, the people that have come through their organizations, Thomas Keller, who, and I mean, there's a whole list of these people, the other guy.
Michael Mina.
Mina, yeah, that's another one of them. Like, there's like this little bit, I don't want to call it a clique, but it's a network of well-known Michelin star chefs. And I think that they've actually done a really good job at this. One thing I've noticed about those independent operators, the Michelin star, James Beard winners, is that they have a very tight network of people that they pass around between those organizations. And they're doing it so like that their people feel like they're staying fresh, that they're learning, that they're getting different perspective. Is that what you're talking about? Something like that? Like a stage, professional stage?
Similar to a stage. That, what you're referring to is typically chef-driven, food-driven, which I think they do an amazing job at. They take care of each other's professional development. But I'm talking about more structured.
Right. Systems.
There's a million restaurants in this country. How many assistant managers get the proper training? How many supervisors get the proper training?
I was going to say one of those pillars you mentioned was the management experience. How do you like go and get that exposure perspective? And I think the other thing too that this industry is kind of guilty of too is doing the same thing over and over again. Like we all use the same business model. And I just think that it's important to see other people's business models. How are they generating revenue? Are they doing the stereotypical 10%, 15% profit, or are they using reoccurring continuity programs where there's like memberships, or they're using different technology to add better experiences that you can charge for, getting outside this box of like just giving, but also know when there's different tiers of experience that you're delivering to different people who want that different level of experience and charging for it.
Absolutely. And I think technology is bringing us more exposure to those different models.
Right.
For the first time, the pandemic really promoted third-party delivery systems, right?
Yeah.
Ghost kitchens. Like, these are things that we hadn't seen prior.
Right.
So it's definitely evolving.
Yeah. I think there was more good that came out of the pandemic than bad, and it took a little time, a little hindsight to get out of it to realize that a lot of good came from that. Whenever there's disaster, there's almost always positivity on the back end of it. But back to your story. So you're traveling the country. You're back in California. You're going around. You're opening restaurants. Where are you? What's your title at this point? Like, how long were you with California Kitchen?
I was with them a couple of years. I became a opening GM. Like, I got to open up stores. If you were flexible at the time, if you were mobile, if you were single, they would move you around. But my highest title was GM. So, but you had to be selected for openings as well.
Got it.
If that makes sense. And in '92, Boston Chicken at the time, which eventually became Boston Market, recruited me as they were just beginning their entrance into Northern California.
Wow, so you were only with California Kitchen going around all these different places for about a year, a little over a year?
2 years.
2 years? It's impressive. So how did you stumble upon Boston Market or Boston Chicken at this point?
We were opening up a restaurant, a California Pizza Kitchen in Bethesda, Maryland.
Okay.
And we took the opening team, as we commonly do, out to dinner, and we stumbled across this little concept called Boston Chicken. And it was the first time I'd seen anything like this rotisserie-based concept. And I fell in love with it. And I give the GM my card, and I was like, I'd love to know if you're ever going to be on the West Coast. I'm moving to the West Coast. And that was the introduction. That was my sharing interest in their concept. And inevitably, I got a call, and they were wanting to build a team to blow out Northern California.
Do you remember what it was about their concept that really resonated with you?
I can share with you my first experience with that opening team. We walk in, and it looks like a deli, right? I don't know if you remember Boston Chicken's initial.
I think I've been in one.
Yeah, their setup is you walk down both a cold and hot line, and you're picking out your sides that go with rotisserie chicken. And we walk in, I'm starting to look, I get greeted almost immediately. Not only do they say, hi, welcome, they reach over the counter and they're like, here, try some of our cream spinach. And I look up and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't stand spinach. And the person says, if you don't like this cream spinach, we'll buy you lunch. I was like, I'll take that. Take the cream spinach. Wasn't excited about it. I started tasting it, and I was sold. I couldn't lie and say I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And so it was that level of detail of their fast casual concept where employees were engaging with the customer, sampling the customer in a neighborly way.
Right, finding that balance between throughput and customer experience, and not making it about just getting as many people up, but really like having a high touch, engaging conversation with somebody.
Exactly.
And I think Boston Market doesn't get enough credit for being kind of like the pioneer. This is like mid '90s, early '90s, where they were a fast casual, and they had a. Well, I mean, I'm surprised they're not around to this day. It was almost a bulletproof concept.
Yeah, they've been through their struggles, a couple bankruptcies. They were over leveraged. I mean, that's a whole nother story of poor financial structure.
What was one of those pillars we talked about? Capital. Yep.
Capital.
Yep. I'll be bringing that back to the surface.
Good.
I feel like a few times as we go forward. So they reach out to you in '92. What was the first? Were you a manager out of the gates, or how did they hire you?
So with Boston Chicken, they structured the company. It's a franchise, but they only had 32 area developers. They didn't have 1,000 franchisees. Mm-hmm. They had 32 growing the concept. So we opened up. I joined them when they had 100 restaurants through 1,200 in 3 years.
When were they established? Do you know?
It would have been late 80s, early 90s. Like 89, 90.
So they were growing fast at this point.
They were going very fast.
Yeah.
And it had to be 80s. They definitely were opened up in 88 or 87.
So it wasn't a franchise, but they had area developers.
Franchise area developers.
Okay, that's what it was.
So what they were looking for were restaurant groups that were established in different areas, or you had to have deep restaurant experience.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. They would look for a restaurant group that, say, owned 20 restaurants in Minneapolis. And they'd go to them and say, do you want to add Boston Chicken to your portfolio? We want you to open up all of Minneapolis. That's sort of a structure.
Got it.
So our group, the CEO and the partner had very deep experience with restaurants as their career. They put up a lot of money upfront in capital to start the group, and they committed to 60 restaurants in Northern California.
Oh, wow.
Up front.
Wow.
And so we went hard.
That sounds like it. So, I mean, what did you learn about going that hard, though?
Well, so you asked what position did I join in. I was an assistant director of training.
Okay.
So new store opening director / ran the training program.
Got it.
And it was a great experience. I mean, the systems I learned there were some of the best. They invested heavily in their people. Now, the misstep was where when we became a publicly traded company, the public markets and shareholders try to dictate growth, and they want growth. They want excitement. They want news. And the growth path that we were on was unsustainable. We kept signing leases that were too expensive.
Okay, so what made it unsustainable?
I'll give you an example. In the last year before I resigned, I was averaging, it was either probably on average 3 new store openings a month.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
it was, I didn't know my team's names by first names. Like I was losing track of.
At that point, it becomes transactional.
It becomes very transactional.
Yeah.
And so when I had employees' spouses coming up to me and saying, why are you pushing the team this hard? Why is my husband working a 14-hour day on Thanksgiving? Why is, these types of questions? I knew well before that it wasn't healthy.
What was the answer to the why? If you could answer them today, knowing what you know, what was the answer? Whether they wanted to hear the truth, you know what I'm saying? If you're answering that question, like honestly to them, through the filter you have today, like what are you saying candidly to them?
We were honest back then, but hindsight's always 20/20.
Right.
The response is, look, your husband has joined a fast growth concept. This is what he signed up for. Unfortunately, it appears to be too much. I agree. This industry requires, it's laborious. It's very blue collar in the sense that you have to have an amazing work ethic.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't a fit for that family.
Well, I mean, in full transparency, what I was getting at was the why because shareholders wanted to grow, and we wanted to keep shareholders happy.
That was one component.
Yeah.
Because there's never ever one simple answer, right? We're always juggling different needs. So in my restaurant group, for example, we're juggling the needs of employee, the guest, the shareholder, and the community. We're always juggling those because we strive for wins across the board.
Yeah.
We don't believe, like in that Boston Chicken case, they were sacrificing the employee experience for the sake of growth and financial, gain and return to their shareholders. In an ideal world, our restaurant group strives to make sure everybody wins in the equation.
Right.
If you have a touch point with our restaurant, it's got to be a win-win.
When you're scaling at 2 to 3 locations a month, is that possible?
I don't think it's definitely possible. You can do anything.
Yeah.
I don't think it speaks well for sustainability, for continuation of a healthy culture. You get burnout. You get all the symptoms of why restaurants fail. They start to bubble up.
Yeah. So you were with Boston Chicken or Boston Market for how long?
2.5 years.
So
almost 3 years.
94?
I think it was. Yep.
And then you had one more stop with World Wrap.
In '95, I get recruited. I put in my resignation when I was getting promoted.
What were you getting promoted from?
I was already
assistant director of training.
Yeah, and then I became director of training.
Okay.
And they wanted me to move over to Einstein Bagels. They had just bought Einstein Bagels.
So were you the director of training for this franchise?
Yes.
Not all of Boston.
Not all of Boston. And so I put in my resignation when they were giving me the promotion, and I just told them I did not agree. They asked, why are you leaving? You're getting promoted. And I was like, I just don't agree with the business philosophy and how people are being treated.
What was that business philosophy?
It was growth at all costs.
And this group also bought into Einstein. So they're moving you from Boston Market to Einstein to do the same thing.
Yes.
And you're like, I don't want to spend the next 2 years doing what I just did the last 2 years.
Yep. Basically.
Sorry, did I cut you short?
No, it's good.
So so you decide to, what was it about World Wrap? Because that was the next stop on your journey, right? What was different about
World Wraps was an interesting, first of its kind concept. So at the time, they were the creators of what we know as today of the wrap.
Really?
So taking a tortilla and putting anything inside of it.
I did not know that.
Yeah. If you look up Nation's Restaurant News and all the articles, they won Hot Concept back in '95. It was my wife who actually introduced me to the concept. I was opening up a Boston Chicken on the same street as the first World Wraps, and we walked down to the World Wraps, and there's a line of 30 people outside the door, just a line down the street, literally. And I was like, what is going on here? And that was what first caught my attention. Then I tasted the product, and then I met the owners. And so it was a combination of events leading up to my joining the group. A quick background on the group: they were 4 friends that came up with the concept while they were vacationing in Mexico together. So they were eating a burrito, and they're like, man, what would it be like to have Thai food inside of this tortilla?
Or literally anything.
Or literally anything. It's just
Such a great idea.
It's just a holder, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a vehicle to get the food to your mouth.
Yep. And so they had opened up their first one, big rave reviews. They were starting to open up their second one. They started interviewing because they were raising money fairly easily to grow. And I said I would join if I could obtain shares, if I could, one, invest.
So you came out with 2 locations.
Yeah,
wow.
two locations.
So one you wanted to invest.
One I wanted to invest. 2 I wanted shares to vest over time and feel as if I was a partner in this venture. And they gave that to me.
Wow. With your time there, so that's 94. When this is your last stop before going on and do your own thing, or I saw that you joined the California Restaurant Association too.
Yeah, so I was with World Wraps through '98.
4 years.
Three plus. It was 3 plus. So in '95 I would have joined them.
So you 2 locations. How many locations do they have when you left?
30.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
So that's a good investment.
You would think.
Oh no! What happened?
We raised $15 million from venture capital funds in Silicon Valley. Same groups that backed PetSmart, Starbucks, all the big names. And as we were growing, so with that $15 million, we were just cranking out stores, and the unit economics were going well. We had a phenomenal team. I probably worked more there than I did at Boston Chicken, but it was a different level of excitement and passion because now I'm a partner.
Right, you're invested. Right? You get skin in the game.
And I had to create the ops manual. I had to create the management training manual. I had to create systems for this new concept. So there was not enough time in the day.
Yeah.
And we're growing along. We're cruising. We get to a board meeting where they typically would write checks for the next couple of stores that we need to open. And the fund says, well, we've got some news. We're closing our fund. We're exiting our positions. And we're going to sell World Wraps. And at the time, we had no clue why they were doing this. They tried to explain it, but it was more like we were in shock. And essentially, the fund had achieved so much success in their other investments.
When you say a fund, what do you mean? You're kind of losing me.
A private equity fund.
Okay. So the people that they went to get the initial capital to scale, the $15 million to scale over the next, so whatever many years, it was so successful that's where you go with it.
So the fund had this there were a number of funds that invested the $15 million. So let's say there's 3 or 4 different private equity funds.
Got it.
What they do is they go out and raise $100 million, and World Wraps was just one of 20 concepts, 20 businesses that they would invest in. And one of their investments was Netscape, which eventually got sold to AOL. And it was massive for them. And so once a fund grows or doubles in size, they look to exit all their investments and start to raise money for fund number 2. And that's the cycle for their investment strategy.
Okay.
And we were just a casualty.
In their success.
Had nothing related to how well we were doing, how profitable we were. They just needed to exit their investment. And
at this point, you're just an asset to them that you can trade.
Yep. Yeah. And they sold us under market, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I did not have the big score I was hoping for.
Right. I feel like this is when it comes to, this is back to like finding that balance. Like there's good and bad to like the big companies and the small companies, and how do we find that middle ground of when we are when the organization is successful, everybody wins.
That's right.
Right. Like how do we find that balance? What goes through your mind when I say that?
I've been searching for that formula and that answer for many years.
Yeah.
And I've tried to incorporate it into my restaurant group.
Are you familiar with Simon? Sorry, did I cut you short?
I want to make sure I finish your question.
Yeah. Please,
so for me, you're reminding, or your question starts to position, or brings to my mind this idea of an employee-owned type organization. ESOPs. Now, ESOPs aren't exactly easy to execute on.
You need like almost like hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get the lawyer to get the paperwork right.
Right. So we've explored it,
yeah.
But I can only share what's working for me and how I've tried to solve this challenge in our industry. So our restaurant group has 4 restaurants plus a 5th licensed restaurant. Over the years, I've had my senior management team grow with me. So I have employees that have been with me 20 years from the very beginning. 15 to 20 years is my senior management team. That's
the beginning.
Yeah, that's the beginning. So that's 5 core people that were with me for a very long time. Those are the ones that get rewarded in my mind first, because they were along for the ride.
Sweat
equity over the years. And so starting with restaurant number 2 is when I started to include those senior members with allowing them to invest. My logic was, why am I, on average, I take 2 investors per restaurant. Why should I get money from an outside, uninvolved participant versus an employee who might be able to get some money to invest from their parents or grandparents or family money? And so I started that process and matching them with, okay, let's say you bought enough to own 5% and you have equity. Well, the sweat equity takes you to another 5%. It's almost like a matching. So now I started creating partners within our group.
Yes.
So all ships start to rise.
Yeah, this is the model that I've explored that I think is best. It's creating opportunity for people and giving your frontline people the opportunity to buy in at one point. If this restaurant is worth $1 million, can you come up with $10,000 to own a point of this restaurant or whatever? And then now they have stake and and from there they can continue to add more or buy more equity over time and build their wealth. And then as the group grows, they will continue to invest their money into it.
So there's caveats to this.
What are the caveats?
Because you have to, people have tried to follow this model and they come back to me and they're like, Ray, the employee, the manager is making a ton of money. They're getting lazy. They're not as involved in the restaurant as they used to be. They're getting comfortable financially. I always emphasize to my partners that so in my organization, you go from employee to supervisor to assistant manager to general manager, then you become a partner. And typically it takes 5 to 7 years before we know you are a partner. You're on track to be a partner.
So you know that they have the culture fit because you've got 5 years of being there. Once you've earned
you're one of
us.
You have to earn it.
Yeah, I like that.
Don't make the mistake of doing this out of the gate. Okay, you don't just go out and hire somebody off the street and say, oh, you want to be a partner in our no, you don't. It's like treat it as if you're getting married.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to get married on to a stranger.
Right. I wonder if there's a way to work in something in the agreement where, like, if you start, like, if you buy in and, like, you're not meeting the expectations that we list out here as partner, we retain the right, the group retains the right to buy your share back and kick you out.
So the way I believe it should be designed is you first start off with the sweat equity, which is commonly referred to as phantom stock. So, Eric, let's say you're my kitchen manager. You've been with me for 3-4 years. You've earned the right to be considered like, hey, get me on the bonus program, Ray. Like, get me, I want to keep moving up. So I say, okay, for the 4 years that you've demonstrated your commitment, your loyalty, your ability to execute, we're going to give you 3% of profits as a bonus. And you can look at the P&L. I share the P&L with you. We review it together. You're going to get 3%. But if anything should change, that's just a bonus. I'm not giving you equity. I'm not giving you shares yet. This is a teaser or a test to see if you can shift from employee mentality to owner mentality. It's not easy for everybody.
No.
Right? And so you're given this bonus structure that mirrors as if you owned 3% of the restaurant, but you don't really own it. So as you get past that hurdle and you come up with $25,000, any number of amount of money, and we allow you to buy in. Now, that you're buying real shares. So let's say you buy another 3%. So now you got 3% in equity, 3% in your bonus, your operating bonus. Combined, that's 6% of the bottom line. That's real money. If you choose to leave, or God forbid you get terminated, we have the right to buy back that 3%, and the operating bonus that mirrored your equity goes away. It does not continue because you no longer work for the company.
Yeah.
How could you get a bonus when you no longer work for the company?
Right.
So you need to retain that right to take those shares back at fair market value.
Okay, that was my next question. Like, is it what they bought in at, or what they, or how they help it? They grew for 5 years and the value's more.
Every owner has a differing opinion about this. Like, I gave this to you, it's my gift or whatever, that I gave you this opportunity. I'm buying it back for the same amount you put into it. I don't believe that's fair. I believe if you continue to work for us and you're a key component with our success, you need to share on the upside.
Right.
It's as if I were to sell the restaurant today, that 3% you bought into was $25,000.
Yeah.
Well, now it's worth $75,000. You need that.
Right. I think that's the ethical thing to do.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm saying that with somebody who doesn't have millions of dollars invested into a restaurant group, but
right. No, it's absolutely true. Yeah. I mean, I'm fortunate to be able to sit here today. The thing I'm most proud of with my career is the 6 partners that I've brought on since 20 years ago, and the level of financial success that they've achieved. One of them participates in three of the restaurants' financials. Another one, 2 of the restaurants. Another one, 2 of the restaurants. They share in the success that we're achieving.
I think that's how it should be, though. I mean, the pie is always better when shared, isn't it? Isn't that?
So how come we don't see this? You've done how many interviews, and how many owners have given up shares of their company to their employees?
I think it's becoming more and more popular. I think more and more people are realizing that you cannot do it alone. If you want to be the best, you need a team of people who treat it like they own it, who are as bought into it as you are, and the only way to get people to buy into it is to literally let them buy into it.
Yes, but here's my point.
Not many to answer
in terms
your
of bonuses, and I want to make sure I get this right. Bonuses combined with equity that they've bought into. So equity and bonuses for our partners exceed over $1 million a year to them.
That's amazing.
So how many owners are willing to give that portion up?
But what do you get in return for giving that up?
I get to fulfill the legacy that I want to leave behind, that I've been a part of improving my community, improving the lives of people that have dedicated themselves to my company, our company.
Who are you going to attract onto yourself by doing this?
Well, the stories, I would encourage you to chat with my team, but success begets success. So There's a reason why we're at the top of the food chain, literally here in Tahoe, as considered one of the best restaurant groups to work for, one of the most well-respected restaurant groups in our community. We have very high standards. We're very involved in giving back. And when you're one of the 6 partners within our group, and the manager says, "Where's my career headed with you guys? What can I achieve here?" I send them to the partners that have achieved that success. And so that level of motivation and inspiration reaps huge benefits.
Yeah, and I have to do a little research. If I have time to talk to people before my interview starts, I talked to Tara before we got started, and I was like, "How long have you been here?" She's been here for 7 years. You know, like, how often do you stumble upon, I don't know her official title, I'm assuming general manager.
She's a supervisor.
Supervisor. 7 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, and I had the ability just to ask random people, like, "How long have you been here?" Another person, 4 years. I think another person said 3 years. Like, those don't sound like long periods of time, but in the industry, that's pretty good.
It's very good.
Yeah.
We have if I were to share with you our retention numbers, it's well far above average.
I love this little rabbit hole we dove into because there was tons of value in it. I just let it go. We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to talk about why you exited
World Wraps.
World Wrap. We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no-strings-attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below. We are back, and where we left off in terms of your timeline, you were just leaving the wrap world. World Wrap?
Yep, World Wraps.
And you had mentioned, like, I like to say that restaurant, you talked a lot about the businesses you were working for and what they were doing, but really what I've learned behind every great organization is a great person or people. So how have you personally transformed up to this point in the timeline when you're about to depart World Wrap?
So World Wraps would be the best example of building a culture that actually people care so much about the company that they're willing to make significant sacrifices. So my personal example is I went a stretch with World Wraps where I worked 9 months without a day off. And that's not healthy, it's not reasonable, but I was so engaged, so excited, having so much fun working with the team that we put together. It didn't feel like work, right? So World Wraps forced me to think about the key components of systems with a growing chain. So I had to transpose my knowledge from Boston market days over to World Wraps, a startup that had no existing systems. It was not easy.
Right.
And I guess my biggest takeaway up to that point, how it transformed me, as you say, or how I developed, was my focus on not only my professional development, but how do I make those around me, i.e. the unit level managers, more successful in their professional development? What is my role in other people's success?
Yes, I love this. We recently had the author of Expand Your Circle on the show, Matt Pepsel, who's also, like they call him, the AKA godfather of PI, Predictive Index, which is a behavioral analysis platform.
I know it.
Are you super love that platform? I'm jockeying for them right now. I love what they're doing there. But in that book, Expand Your Circle, he talks about the really, like, the message he's trying to get out is exactly what you're sharing with us now, is that your role as a leader is to lift up others around you. You can't do it all yourself. You have to recreate yourself and others.
That's it.
And you got to pull yourself up before you can lift others, to your point.
Correct.
So, and that's what I'm hearing from your stories. Like, you're growing and you're realizing to grow beyond where you currently are is through lifting others up, coaching.
So your listeners may or may not want to hear this next part, but my goal was both altruistic as well as selfish.
Why was it selfish?
One of my goals in my career on the personal side was to get away from my business for a year and to take a break. In 2014, I took my wife and 2 boys to Spain for a year. We moved over there in
Where? I'm curious.
Barcelona, Spain.
Nice.
And I get this question a lot, and I've spoken at a conference, a restaurant conference, on how do you do something like a year getaway. Most people can't conceive of it. While I was gone, we had the best year for our restaurant group up to that point.
Wow.
That is only achieved by creating partners, a culture, values, clear vision, clear mission, and systems, right? And our team fully believes in what we're trying to accomplish. And most businesses, in my opinion, make the mistake that the owner has to be the star or the focal point or the driver of all decisions. And that's just not the case.
That's ego right there.
That's ego.
Yeah.
Ego destroys companies.
Right. And I mean, I lean, and that's one of the biggest lessons, and probably one of the biggest pushbacks I get is I think the path to success is through partnerships. And I think it's because the industry is getting more and more and more, and only continuously getting more and more competitive. You can't be the best by yourself anymore. I don't think so. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, I don't think the way how the expectation, the bar is being raised on the industry, I don't think all the different things you have to be good at today to be the best. It's not just the 4 walls anymore. It's like
right.
it bleeds beyond the 4 walls.
Well, also, what happens when I'm sick? What happens when I get hit by a bus? What happens when something tragic happens?
Yeah.
What condition do you leave the team in to succeed after you have left?
Yeah. So the selfishness was you were growing other people so you could get away.
Exactly. I wanted. I had become somewhat of a workaholic, and didn't have good pause buttons. My family was starting to grow. My kids were young, and I wanted to embrace them as well. I wanted to, as hard as I go in business, I wanted to go hard with my family,
right.
and be present, be attentive, be part of a close-knit family. And that was just one of my goals, is for us to get away. And I had to prepare my group 2 years before I left in order to achieve that goal.
So this was in 2014. So you started in 2012. Basically, you announced like in 2 years.
No, I started my restaurant group in 2002.
Yeah, but I think what I heard is that 2 years before you left, you started grooming your team.
Oh, correct.
Yeah. Okay, so back to 2002. So you leave World Wraps late 90s.
Late 90s, I started contemplating my own venture for the first time. Started to think about investors. I was trying to pull together resources to open up my own concept. And while I was doing that, I was training managers from different restaurants across the state with the California Restaurant Association, like an independent contractor. They hired me, and they asked me to help do professional development. And so I was doing that for, I don't know, maybe 6 months, when that suddenly turned into an offer to join the California Restaurant Association as their executive director. And for those who don't know much about restaurant associations, California is the largest state restaurant association in the country. Represents probably around 20,000 locations across the state. But for me, that was a new experience, because associations are separated into 2 action areas. So lobbying efforts, trying to make sure the politicians are enacting laws that are beneficial to business and restaurants in particular, and not hurting us. And then the other area is education, compliance with laws, certifications, helping the restaurant members.
Right.
I was focused on the restaurant member side. CEO was focused on the lobbying effort side.
Yeah. I spent a little time with a restaurant association. I won't say which one. My experience there was that I think it was around the time, it was 2012. I think that there was a movement happening where people were becoming less dependent on state-run associations because the education side was abundant on the internet. You no longer had to go to, like, the information was there, you know? So, like, one of the legs that was starting to come out from underneath of this three-leg pillar, like, thing. I do still think that the lobbying is really important, though. Having people, lawyers that are plugged in to be communicating to the restaurant owners of the state, this is what's going on. This is how you need to vote to vote in favor of the restaurant industry. I will also piggyback on that and say that it seems like a lot of those lobbyists are lobbying for larger restaurant groups, not independent restaurant groups.
That is true, aside from so the chains have their own lobbyists. The California Restaurant Association is primarily existing because of the independents. The big chains will support some efforts, but they're doing their own thing. I would disagree that a well-run state restaurant association can continue to be relevant in a number of ways. But first, they have to have a budget to be able to have resources. But California in particular, I'll give you an example. If you owned a restaurant, Eric, I would say, are you a member? Like, I'm a member and I'm on the board, so I'm an advocate. But the type of information that they provide is critical for me and my team. I'll give you an example. Do you know the top 3 current lawsuits that are prevalent in California that are detrimental to restaurants?
I can guess one of them is sexual harassment.
Nope. It's part of it. I mean, it's happening all the time, but that's not one of the top 3.
What are they?
Post-termination workman comp claims.
Okay.
That's one. Second one would be ADA compliance of your website. Your online presence has to meet certain ADA compliance issues. That's an easy one for lawyers to go after because so many restaurants just outsource or create their own website, right?
That's for disabled people.
Disabled people.
What's the ADA stand for again? I always
American Disability Act.
That's right.
And then PAGA is legislation in California that's been very detrimental to our industry. It stands for Personal Attorney General Act. Essentially, this law has become a moneymaker for lawyers. They utilize servers, bussers, hosts, any employee in a restaurant to attack or extract money from restaurants in the form of let's say typically from disgruntled employees, but it could be any number of scenarios where the lawyer says, hey, if you don't feel like you were treated properly, we can go after that restaurant for XYZ claims because of this PAGA Act allows the employee to go down a legal process that's very simplified.
How much of this has to do with being in a very blue state?
I think that's a big part of it. I definitely feel like we're hearing and witnessing an environment in business where you're seeing unionization, you're seeing protests, you're seeing, fairness factors coming into play. People ask me, what are we going to do about it? I keep coming back with the same answer I have always had for the last 20 years is treat your people really well. That's it. Like, if your employees are disgruntled, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, do the right thing.
So yeah, I mean, this is so. I identify as a moderate. I think I'm right down the middle. I see pros and cons to both left and right, and I believe in conscious capitalism. I believe in capitalism. I don't believe, but the thing is, but to what you said, if we change the culture, culture is exponentially capable of changing. Systems, processes, procedures, like that stuff is hard to change. Once it's set into motion, once those things are there, it's hard to change. If we can change the values of people, if we can give restaurant owners and business owners across the country values and how to take care of their people, you really don't need to lean on the government to have these systems and processes and procedures to take care of people. And that's what, in my mind, that's what conscious capitalism is. It's using money, the capitalistic system, to take care of people and to spread wealth, exactly the way you have with your partners in this restaurant.
And do you mandate that? Is it?
It has to be a choice.
Become laws? Because it has been choice up to now. And I don't know about you, but I don't know too many restaurant owners that are willing to give up equity and profits. And
I think it's changing.
It has to change.
I think it's changing. It's my goal to find those people, so more people. This is the mission. This is what I mean by inspire, empower, transform the industry. This is what we're trying to do. Is like we're giving people access to minds like yours, man. Like, and I think that's the only way we're going to change it, because it has to be on the radar.
Well, I'm living proof that whether you call it an experiment or just my professional growth, my experimentation with, how do people respond? What inspires people? What motivates people to come into work each and every day and to give their best? Some people are motivated financially. Some people are motivated socially. Some people are motivated in many different ways.
Yeah. I will say this: one last jab on the restaurant associations. Not all. I'm not trying to generalize, because I know every association is led by different people. But one experience I had is that I found that the association I was associated with was very driven by monetizing the association, and I found that their priority was to their sponsors more than it was to the members of the association.
Yeah, that's not cool.
And that was one of the things that really drove me away. Honestly speaking, it was that experience that is one of the reasons why I had this core value to really only promote the tools and services being referred to us organically. That I never wanted to put the sponsors ahead of the members, the listeners in my case. Yeah,
it's always a tough balancing act when your existence is codependent on your revenue stream, like who's paying the bills. Right?
I get that, which is why I'm trying to get away from, like, I love my sponsors, grateful for my sponsors, do not want to be dependent on my sponsors. I would love to continue to work with sponsors, obviously, going forward, but I need other channels of revenue to keep me, so I can stay honest. Is kind of my thought process. But back to your story, I feel like you've shared a lot of the ethos of what the Tahoe Restaurant Group is today, with your values, how you structure your organization, how you put the emphasis on building systems and then building people to manage those systems, so you can remove yourself to work on the business, things like this, to be able to I don't know, we've covered a lot, but you left the restaurant association, or you're still associated with the association to this day, but along your timeline you started the Tahoe Restaurant Group in 2002.
Correct.
So
now, I left the California Restaurant Association position in 2000. Good buddy of mine and I that had worked at Boston Market together decided to join forces, and we opened up our very first restaurant in Las Vegas in 2000, end of 2000. And primarily I was drawn to the opportunity because, one, my partner, he was the leasing agent for a casino in Vegas that we eventually went into. So he was leasing up spots for the casino. And he said, Ray, you got to come take a look at this. The casino is willing to build out the restaurant for us. I was like, the entire thing? And he's like, yes. I was like, why would they do that? And he goes, they don't want to run restaurants. And, there were all these other compelling reasons. And I get
restaurants are hard to run?
So I got excited. I put in my notice with the Restaurant Association. I tell my wife, who almost starts crying because she definitely doesn't want to live in Vegas. And I was like, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out. Long story short, we open up a franchised concept, and let's just say the environment inside a casino has primarily been about taking care of their gamblers, the casino guests. And somebody could come in and they often use their rewards card, and they build up points and due to their losses typically. And they would come into our restaurant and they'd be like, yeah, I want a couple of pizzas, just put it on my card. Use my points. And we'd have to apologize and explain we're not owned by the casino. And they're like, but I get everything free off my points from the other two restaurants inside this casino. And I was like, we understand, we apologize, but,
Different
agreement.
Yeah.
And they just walk right out.
Oh, man.
And so we approached the casino and we said, look, this is something we didn't understand or we didn't see coming. You're going to, in the way you reimburse your other restaurants that you run, we need some type of reimbursement or else we can't attract your casino guests.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're just going to have to figure it out. Eventually they gave us like 25% reimbursement, but that wasn't it fell way short.
Yeah.
And we closed our doors within a year.
Oh, man.
And that was a big rude awakening because up to that point I had opened up easily well over 100 restaurants.
100. Wow.
And it's a blow that you have to question, yourself.
Did
right?
I learn anything?
Yeah, what did I learn?
Yeah.
And so the big learning lesson was found in the lease, right? If we had done more due diligence and understood the casino environment internally with how they give away free food and beverage, like it's obvious now they give away free alcohol. We should have asked more pointed questions.
Well, that's the thing about this industry is you just don't know what you don't know until you, and there's so much diversity.
So you're exactly right. However, through programs like yourself, through social media, through a mentor network, I highly advise your listeners and new restaurateurs to surround themselves with their mentors and advisors.
This is what restaurants, I don't know if you caught the mic flag here, a melting pot of mentors.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what it's all about. And that's really what I'm trying to do with Restaurant Unstoppable Network is to invite all my past guests to this place to share information with each other, but also to pay it forward to the next generation.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to build. I 100% agree because that's what I'm trying to do. We have to bring this with accumulate our knowledge.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, man, for sure. So let's just do this because I feel like there's so much we can talk about, but I also just kind of want to go through. So what is Tahoe Restaurant Group today? You have 4 concepts plus a 5th licensing concept?
Correct. So we're at major ski resorts in Tahoe, Palisades, which was formerly Squaw Valley, North Star, which is run by Vail, and here at Heavenly in South Lake Tahoe. And then Wally's is a licensed concept that mirrors our base camp recipes and systems and resources.
Got it. So what came first? Like, what was the order of opening these restaurants?
Yep. So following the closure of, so the good news is from the failure of my first restaurant comes learning, right? And that's how you want to look at failure. It's not a loss. It's not, sure, financially I lost money. But if you want to fail, you fail quickly, right? You notice I didn't run that restaurant for years and years and just bleed money and struggle. I knew I wasn't able to turn it around. I knew I had made a bad agreement with the landlord, and we got out of it. I loaded up a truck with all our equipment, all our furniture, and we signed a deal in Tahoe in 2002, opened the doors of Fireside Pizza, my own concept that we created. I hired an amazing chef as a consultant, a good friend of mine. He has a very successful consulting practice in San Francisco called The Culinary Edge. His name's Aaron Novashen, amazing guy. And he helped me create our first concept, and the doors opened in December of 2002.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I thought you paused there. But
No,
keep going.
sorry. And so Fireside is the first one. Rubicon Pizza at North Star was our second one. Shortly after that, I opened up a Mikuni Sushi out of Sacramento. The Mikuni Sushi Group is very popular, very well known, very well respected group. We partnered 50-50 and opened up a sushi concept there. That after the 10-year lease ran out, we decided to close it. Following Rubicon and Mikuni, we opened up Base Camp in 2012. So 2002 Fireside, 2007 Rubicon, 2012 Base Camp, 2014 Azul Latin Kitchen.
Okay, got it. And then you had the sushi concept 06 to 08, 2 years?
06 to 2016, 10 years.
Got it. And what was the reason for getting out of that?
You know, Mikuni, we went through together, we went through that rough period of 08, 09, 2010. And so operating for the Mikuni group in Tahoe was very seasonal. And they were used to year-round consistency. And their numbers were much more consistent and stronger in Sacramento and the Bay Area.
Got it.
And it just didn't make sense for us to continue. Even though we had decent revenues, it was a difficult grind to sustain. So you can't find too many great sushi chefs in ski towns.
Right. So looking at, so you have 02 to 07, 5 years between Fireside and Rubicon. You kind of opened the sushi and the Rubicon close to each other as far as time. Then another almost 6 years goes by before you open a third concept, and then another 2 years goes by before you open a fourth with Azul. So what is your vision for your restaurant group? Are you trying to scale and grow beyond this, or are you comfortable with 4? It doesn't look like you're really trying to build to scale.
So we definitely have concepts. 2 of the concepts we could absolutely scale and grow, but I'm at the point in my career where currently I sit on. So how do I spend my time today? I'm transferring my position, my responsibilities, my anything I have authority over to my 6 internal partners and grooming them to be my replacement. While I'm doing that, and they are fully taking the reins, I also sit on 6 boards. All of them are restaurant related. So I sit on the California Restaurant Association board. I sit on the North Tahoe Community Alliance board here in Tahoe. I sit on Spot On, which is a leading POS cloud-based technology provider, all-in-one platform for restaurants, similar to competitors Toast.
Yep.
I sit on the board of a technology company called Voice Plug. They utilize voice AI to take transactions over the phone or through the drive-through, all using a voice bot.
And I saw the Moby Munch too.
Moby Munch was years ago. That was a company that I started with a partner. Gosh, that would have been back in 09. I think it was 2010. During that period. That's a whole nother
podcast.
Nother podcast.
I don't know if we want to get into that since it's not still going around, but just give me one key takeaway from that. Biggest lesson.
You know, we jumped on board the food truck craze, and we modeled the company after what we thought was going to be a huge win, which was being the landlord on wheels. So we outfitted brand new trucks, and we wanted to teach people how to run food trucks because it was new. And
This is '09 to 2014, so it was
Yep.
like, this was a hot part of the industry at this point.
super hot. We rolled out a couple hundred trucks. What we didn't anticipate is food trucks has the same, if not greater, failure rate
Oh my
as
gosh.
restaurants.
I try to steer people away from food trucks.
Yeah,
personally.
it's very, very
It's a
challenging.
logistical nightmare. And
It should only be utilized. My takeaway in food trucks is it needs to be complementary. Like, say, for example, if Azul had a food truck, it'd be for weddings, corporate events, promotion, marketing, that sort of thing.
right, getting your brand out to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. I think the world of regulation also caught up to food trucks, and the benefits of the early Renaissance food truckers weren't there 4 or 5 years into it because the regulations caught up.
It was a very challenging environment to do business in.
Right, and you also better have some mechanical skills to boot.
Tons of mechanics. Exactly. You think running restaurants are hard? I think food trucks takes it to another
I think
level.
pop-ups and ghost kitchens are the new food trucks, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's
I think that's how they should be treated. If you can't open a brick and mortar, start where you can. Most people could have a friend who's in the industry that will let them do a pop-up.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I like that. You're experimenting and growing and learning through the challenges you have of operating a restaurant for a month.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
get that experience.
Got it. So one question I had as you were talking about, your vision for how you're looking to pass the baton to your current partners.
Correct.
You started as the CEO, sole proprietor.
I started off as an LLC from day one. Each restaurant is its own LLC.
Okay.
And the reason you want to think about your structure is you do want to keep in mind growth. Where is growth headed? LLCs are structured in a way that you can allow additional members fairly easily, allocating different levels of equity along the way. But it's also for protection, right? Limited liability companies offer owners different protections than sole proprietorships. I don't want to go into those details. Like, I advise people getting lawyers and
Right.
making sure they get the right advice.
But you were the sole owner of the LLC when you started.
No,
No.
very first one, I started with my partner from Boston, Mark, that I mentioned.
That's right.
And
Same partner in Los Angeles or Las Vegas.
yes.
Got it.
Yes. And we did that one. He lived in Vegas during the time. I moved up to Tahoe to
This is
run
Fireside.
it. This is Fireside.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I guess where I was going with this, the one I think big challenge with a lot of owners is that somebody has to still be the visionary. Somebody still has to have the vision. So is it safe to say that you are the visionary in this restaurant group?
My people ask me all the time, oh, so you're a chef. I'm not a chef.
Right.
I'm not a foodie. As ironic as it sounds, after being a part of 150 plus openings, I'm the business side, the visionary, the leadership component that is the glue behind scaling an organization.
So with a lot of partners, who steers the ship?
Partnerships are very tricky. You have to have very defined roles, and oftentimes that should be derived by your experience level and your skill set, but a lot of owners don't know what their skill set is.
Not a lot of people in general aren't self-aware.
Right.
Yeah.
They really, it's challenging. For me, I have always been the sole operator. My partner was not an operator until later on in his career. But for me, it was very clear that I ran day to day.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I guess going forward, if with the current existing partners, if you wanted to scale, how would you go about choosing what the vision of the organization is? Is it a collective? Like, how do you do that?
So I'll give you the example of Azul.
Yeah.
We had just opened up base camp 2 years prior. We knew the location was a premium location. We were doing very well at base camp.
Can you describe the location, what made it premium, like where we are today, what makes us a premium location?
For those of you that don't know South Lake Tahoe, it sits on the border of California and Nevada where they meet.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, on the Nevada side exists some very large casinos.
Like literally a foot over the border.
Yes. So
let's put it this way. I was staying in California, and I could have thrown a rock at the Nevada
That's right.
casino.
And it's walking distance from my restaurants.
Yeah.
So you have literally 5,000 hotel rooms within walking distance of this property.
Got it.
Now, that doesn't explain why a lot of our neighboring restaurants aren't as successful as us. Yes, we have the foot traffic. Yes, we have good visibility, good location, but you got to execute at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah.
And
this is why I put Four Walls marketing so high on the priority, because it doesn't matter if you drive people to your restaurant, because you can't. I mean, you get probably a lot of people here just on vacation, which is probably nice because there's constant turn, but if they won't come back if they didn't have a good experience.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Did I share with you our marketing budget?
No.
We don't have one.
Oh, really?
We don't
Wow.
do marketing. We don't spend money on marketing.
You spend money on people, don't you?
Spend money on our people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I cut you short when I brought that up. But do you remember what you were trying to say before?
You were asking about partnerships? Or?
Well, you started talking about location, and then I asked you why. But really, what we were talking about was the vision, and when you have partners, and like who steers the ship with that many partners? How do you know where you're going?
Yeah. So
you said clear defined roles.
For us, it was super obvious because I was the guy with feet on the ground. My partner at Fireside lived in another city.
Yeah, it's tough.
So he helped negotiate the lease, and he would help in any area that I asked, but there's limitations to somebody who lives out of state.
Yeah.
So it was very clear what roles. I had all the roles. So by the second store, I pretty much went on my own. So Rubicon, I invited the chef to invest. One of my first partners internally that started off as a line cook. Worked for me for 4 or 5 years, and then he went to culinary school, came back, helped me open up Rubicon and Mikuni Sushi.
Got it.
And so, our roles have always been very clear.
Got it. So the one thing that hasn't really come up, and this is something that I've been kind of itching to talk about before we get to like where you are today and where you're headed fully, the fifth concept is a licensed restaurant. So it's like, what is a licensed restaurant?
So you would think of it similar to a franchisor relationship, except much more simplified. So with a franchise relationship, you have legal obligations and responsibilities to, for example, assist the franchisees with site selection, assist them with marketing and a budget for marketing and advertising and training the new store. Each new store that opens, you supply a certain amount of training resources. With a licensing agreement, I'm saying you can use our recipes, use our systems. We'll train you and some of your team members, and it's minimal support. You only want to do this when your licensee has in-depth experience and is very familiar with running restaurants. I wouldn't advise it for anyone just starting out.
Well, it's also a different brand. So if things don't go well, it's not going to reflect poorly on your restaurant.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So in full, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but you mentioned Wally's. I think you said that, right?
Yeah, Wally's,
Okay.
Dan Dreyer and his
Yeah.
team, phenomenal, great partners. I consider them partners.
Right. So Dan is who referred me to you, and Dan is basically operating your recipes, your intellectual property in his restaurant.
Correct.
But it's a different concept, and he's using different back of house systems and processes. So I love the way that Dan took the approach. He basically went to people who do what they do best, and he asked. And he plugged those things into his business, into his brand.
He and I spent some time looking at Folsom Lake Bowl, which his family owns. And I said, hey, look, I do have concerns. You run a restaurant in your establishment, but there's a lot going on here. There's multiple bars. There's a bowling alley. Like, come spend some time with me up in Tahoe, which he did. And he brought his right-hand kitchen manager. And after spending a month, 6 weeks with us, I advised them to incorporate or give Restaurant Systems Pro a call because I was friends with David Scott Peters.
Okay, I didn't realize you were how they found Restaurant Systems Pro.
I turned them on to them, and Dan fully embraced they're great at providing, especially new restaurateurs, literally any restaurateur that doesn't already have the systems, with the foundational component of what a restaurant needs.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm a fan of how they've supported Dan and his team, and Dan is part of the elite restaurant group now.
Yeah.
With Restaurant Systems Pro.
Yeah, and I love the approach that they took of just like, and I didn't know that you were a part of coaching them through that. Like, if you have no restaurant experience, if you're not a restaurant person, if you didn't spend tens of years in the industry learning systems, processes, procedures, if you don't have your suite of processes that you're plugging into your new business, go to a company that exists, that does this, and use their systems. And guess what? You likely aren't going to be able to build software around the systems that you created, right? These systems they're baked into software. They're a path through the obstacle, is what I like to say, of running a restaurant.
The flip side of doing what Dan did with our licensing agreement and Restaurant Systems Pro is this is the biggest reason why franchise systems like McDonald's, Jack in the Box, Taco Bell exist. They're handing you a concept with systems already incorporated.
Yeah.
That is the reason why we have such large chains in this industry. Now, not everybody can afford going out and buying a McDonald's or Taco Bell or whatever.
But what I love about this with your licensed restaurants is that it's another way to monetize your intellectual property. It's another way of saying, hey, we don't just have to run restaurants. We can take what we've figured out, this code we've cracked, our recipes, our excellence, and we can sell it to people in different markets who we don't compete with.
Exactly.
And I don't even know how I'm sure that how you structure that as far as the pricing and all this stuff is like pretty private, so we don't need to get into that. But it's another business model. It's another way to break the 1905 approach of just making your 10%. Right? Like, how do you take these assets and how do you monetize your worth?
It is, and I don't advise jumping into licensing or franchising for groups that think, oh, that's a nice way to expand my concept. You literally need years of experience within a franchise system to understand that owning a franchisor or being a licensor is not, use my IP and go be successful. It requires an oversight and a skill set that you need to ensure your licensee or your franchisee is successful. So if they fail, you fail.
Yeah. I think we're at a good spot to take another break to thank our sponsors. We're going to come back and start talking about. I want to dive in finally into this. We talked a lot about these things, but the 4 critical pillars. We're going to officially unpackage those, and then anything we didn't discuss that you were hoping we would. And I'd like to talk about the future and where the industry is headed, in your opinion.
Okay.
We have to interrupt today's video to let you know that right now, Restaurant Systems Pro is offering a no-strings-attached 60-day trial that will help you improve your systems, increase your profit, and find better work-life balance. All you have to do is click the link below.
We're back, and I feel like we have to talk about these 4 pillars because I did tease that we would come back to them. I feel like we've already kind of circled around the 4 pillars, which again are location, concept, management experience, and capitalism or capital. And then after that, you're just such a wealth of knowledge. Whatever you feel like we haven't discussed thereafter, I just want you to pretend like you're listening to this right now. Whatever you wish whatever you think you would want to know that somebody listening to this might not know, like that's what we're going to discuss.
Okay.
Back to these 4 pillars: location, concept, management, and capital. I feel like we covered a lot of this already, just organically in the conversation.
So I'll pick up, I think people generally understand location. If you're a new restaurateur, absolutely get an experienced lawyer that has leasing experience to go through that lease. Today, my leases are 100 pages long.
Wow.
So it's not like you should take it lightly. It's
No.
one of the most important things you could do. Regarding concept, so we've all heard this story before. The new restaurateur wannabe comes up and says, I got this great concept. I come from such and such place, and we made such great, ethnic food at this location, in my country, and eventually they follow their passion to create a restaurant that is food that they grew up on,
Yeah.
right? Something like that. So a friend of mine came to me and said, hey, this Domino's just went under. I want to take over the space. And I was like, great. What do you want to put in there? And he says, well, pizza restaurant. I was like, Domino's just failed. Like, let's think about this for a second. He goes, no, my pizza's so much better. And I was like, no, let's think about the broader market demand for what is needed in our town. So I highly encourage people to not follow, their wants and needs in terms of food, but ask the question and map out. The way the chains do it is you go into a South Lake Tahoe, for example, and you would map out every restaurant within a 1 and 3 mile radius. And then you would total, there's 7 Mexican restaurants, there's 8 pizzerias, there's 6 sushi concept, whatever.
10 burger joints.
10 burger joints. You're looking for a window of opportunity, and you're surveying the audience and saying, what's missing? What doesn't exist?
Right.
And you'll arrive at, it's ramen. We don't have ramen or whatever.
Right.
And follow the market demand, not your personal wants and needs when it comes to concept.
I agree with that. I would say that if you're if you're a chef, right, and you're thinking maybe, or you have a vision and you're just like married to this food that you've had this dream your entire life to do, maybe consider looking for the market where they're not doing that. If you're so married to it, go to the market where you are needed and wanted.
That's right.
Like if your concept's so good, give it legs.
That's
go
right.
to where it will work.
So then you have to ask, once you get past the concept itself, there's concept development. How do you create a menu? How do you position your average check in a given location? How do you create the decor, right? What's the guest touch points? But more critically, and just as important, what are the staff touch points?
What do you mean by that?
We're sitting in one of my restaurants right now, so we can easily look over at the kitchen, and there's a couple employees standing in front of the expo line. Is that expo line built correctly for them to have efficiency and productivity when we're super busy? Not when we're just slow and medium level of business, but when we're cranking.
So it's like the steps of service, but steps to serving your staff.
So it's the steps to equip them
Okay.
to be able to execute. So how are your booths organized? How is your bar laid out? If you glance over at my bar, and unfortunately it took me 15 years to figure this out, and I wasn't even the one that figured it out. It was a bar manager. We have in every restaurant I've ever worked, you can look over, Eric, and see where that margarita machine is on the counter.
Yep.
Next to it on the left is a door. There's a door in the middle of our bar that leads to a storage unit where we house all our alcohol. So instead of taking 50 steps to dry storage downstairs or upstairs or in the very back of the restaurant, we finally put it in the freaking bar so that bartenders are loving life and take 2 steps to grab a new bottle.
Yeah, building out a floor plan that's like ergonomic and makes it like,
that's it.
Just economic, like steps. How many steps does it take to execute the job?
So the chains are brilliant at this, and the independents need to learn from those who've gone before them.
It's funny. So we had Stephanie Robson on the show. She is a professor at Cornell, and she taught restaurant design, both front of house and back of house. And it's amazing. Listen to that episode. Just look up Stephanie Robson, like restaurant design, if you haven't listened to that episode yet. But when you really take the time to like look at these variables of like, is this restaurant laid out right? Like where does the delivery come? Like, is there an easy way to get food from the truck to inside the restaurant? Once it's in the restaurant, do you have to bring it to the other side of the restaurant to get it into the walk-in, or is the walk-in right next to the back door? You know, like food should only move in one direction.
Yep.
And it should go out of people out the front door.
Yep.
Comes in the back door, goes out the front door.
Yep.
And like when you start thinking, like you just start to realize that so many locations are so bad.
Yep.
Like when you really look at that, like there's no flow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you a broad view of concept. I could dive into.
Yeah, sure.
You know.
You're welcome back anytime, my friend. So we covered location, I feel like, pretty good. You got into concept pretty good. I love that idea of giving your staff the tools they need to be successful, staff touch points, management experience.
So
systems.
I would suggest that there needs to be someone, maybe it's Restaurant Systems Pro, maybe it's another organization. I know how I do it, but at each one of my concepts, think of conducting a restaurant audit of the systems that exist. So let's start in the back of the house. Every restaurant at its core must have a prep sheet to start their day.
Right.
In other words, every ingredient that exists in the restaurant on a cook line has to be prepared. Right? So sounds simple, but how do you establish appropriate pars on that checklist? How do you delegate the tasks? How do you train the task? So materials and systems to support your staff becoming highly successful and efficient. That starts with their training. So you got to have training manuals. You have to have a job descriptions. You have to have par sheets. You have to have a purchasing guide. You have to have an ops manual. Where do you get this stuff from? I'll bring it up again. You're very familiar with Restaurant Systems Pro. If you don't have it in your personal experience, they are a one-stop shop to grab those items.
I'm worried to say this out loud, but I feel like by the time this is live, I feel like I'll have the blessing. But becoming very familiar with Restaurant Systems Pro, there is a really great chance Restaurant Unstoppable and Restaurant Systems Pro will be collaborating. That if you join Restaurant Unstoppable Network, you will get all those manuals as part of your entrance in. And a little teaser, I want to build out a tier to the network, where if Eric Cacciatore is going to from 0 to 5 restaurants in 5 years or less, this is exactly how he's doing it. And I'm going to have strategic partners. I'm going with Restaurant Systems Pro because this is for Eric Cacciatore. Based off of who I am, I'm not a systems person. I'm the kind of person that's going to contract that out and give. I need a checklist to follow personally.
Yep.
You know, so if that sounds like you and you're listening to this and you're a visionary, you're a dreamer, you're socially, emotionally intelligent, but you're not like mechanically intelligent or systems intelligent, then I think what you're talking about and what we want to do in the network is for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's much needed.
Yeah.
Because you want to see people succeed. I want to see people succeed. There's nothing more heartbreaking than somebody spending their life savings opening up their dream restaurant and it doesn't work within 6 months.
Right.
Like, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah, and it's hard to recover from. I mean, you sacrifice so much. You refinance homes, you remortgage homes.
That's right.
Like, it's you want to do it right the first time.
Yeah.
Which leads us to capital.
Well, let me
Or
see.
did I cut you short?
So management systems and experience. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by management experience, because there's a big difference between leadership and management. Right? Management, you're tackling and blocking and executing on projects or tasks. Right? It's very straightforward, black and white. Leadership is the soft skills behind inspiring people, motivating people, guiding people, coaching, teaching, mentoring. And those are two different skill sets. Systems help on the management side, right? I had a dentist friend come to me and said, I'm at the end of my career, I'm selling my practice, but my dream has been to open up a restaurant. Can you help me? And I said,
You try to talk him out of it first.
I said, sure, I'll help you, but you have to help me likewise. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I have this passion for clean teeth, and I want to open up a dentist's office. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, exactly. What are you talking about? You think running a restaurant's easy?
Yeah.
And so I talked to him. He goes, well, share with me why it's so hard. And I would give him role play scenarios. So it's a Saturday night. You've got a busy Italian restaurant, and your 17-year-old hostess calls out because she's going to prom. And two of your servers were dating, and they broke up, and neither of them want to work together. So now you're down 3 people on a Saturday night. You're scrambling to get replacements in. When was the last time you managed a team of 15, 20, call it 17 to 28-year-olds?
Yeah.
Right? What's your experience level with that? And there's so many scenarios I could bring up that take place in restaurants that it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And people just can't grasp. So I always recommend come hang out a week with me. You really want to open up a restaurant, see what the real world is, and we're what I believe, have a tight running ship.
That would be a great show. Scared Straight Restaurants.
Yeah. Well, I would love so we already kind of get that with who's the famous television personality, Hell's Kitchen,
I know
Ramsay.
Yeah.
So he kind of already fits that, the drama and the emotions that fly around restaurants. I don't believe that's a healthy way to look at our industry, because there are a lot of positivity examples.
He's starting to change his march a little bit. He's not marching to the same beat he used to. I think he kind of played out the tyrant, and I think that the world. I think this is an example of the world moving away from that, where it's not good for his brand. And I think his publicists were probably like, time for you to be more gentle on TV. You're seeing. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I noticed the new version of him is a lot more gentle than the old version.
Yeah, I haven't seen the new version, but I would love to put together or be part of a concept that I've been working on, where a group of restaurants that are operating at a high level, that are validated through a restaurant audit, that contain the necessary systems, contain strong management and leadership, and let others come and stage and learn the front of the house, the other components, not just the chef piece.
How do we do that?
Well, I got some ideas.
Okay. Okay, so can we wrap up management experience?
So management experience, not only do you have to be a good manager, a good leader, but you got to be able to teach, your replacement. Teach, how do you coach or teach a busser to become a great server? And how do you teach an average server to become a great one? And bartender, and all these numerous positions in this restaurant, because maybe in your career you haven't spent much time teaching people. So management systems are much more than just the paperwork behind it. It's also your leadership philosophy, your leadership style, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and we did a great episode with Nick Cirillo that I always echo, and it's this idea of building tangible framing for growth in your organization. So like literally, if you get hired as a busser, like he pointed out, and you want to become a general manager, like here's the path to get to that point.
Yep.
Yeah, I kind of heard that in what you were sharing.
I love that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Capital.
Yes, time to talk about capital.
So countless times I've seen many new restaurant owners with great intentions raise money, build out a restaurant, and come in over budget. It's just, whether it's the contractor that went wrong or the oversight of the build out, or restaurants are expensive.
Yeah.
Okay. So many restaurants fail because they open their doors and suddenly they have no more fuel or capital to cover payroll, to maybe they want to do some marketing and advertising. Maybe they need to revamp and adjust their menu. And so now they're having purchasing problems. Capital, everybody underestimates how capital intensive this industry is.
Right. Yeah. And this is one of my biggest lessons. They say whatever you think it's going to take to open, double it. And then whatever you need to run your business for a year and a half with no money coming in, you got to be able to operate in the red basically for a year and a half is what they say. Well, you can do that.
Well, who has that deep of pockets?
Millionaires.
Yeah. And who's getting into restaurants? Non-millionaires.
Yeah.
They want to become millionaires.
Right.
So here's one piece of advice that I'm constantly finding myself giving. I'll ask, okay, how much money do you have to invest in your restaurant? They're like, well, I'm taking out a line of equity on my house, and I've saved, $250,000, so I've got $500,000 to open up, a restaurant in 1,500 square feet. And I reply, so you're using all your capital? And they're like, yep. I said, no. Get a couple of investors, family and friends, pool some money together, and use your money last when you're in serious need. Yeah. Right? You're the safety net, right? Your investors understand risk. Hopefully you find investors that if you lose them, if you unfortunately were to close your doors and lose their investment, they're not going to suffer. They're not going to go homeless. They're not giving you their last bit of savings, right? So the investors invest for a reason. They take risks, but don't use all your own money. And then the second mistake they make is trying to take on too much debt at the very forefront of their new venture, and now they can't service that debt.
Right.
And it's very stressful.
Yeah, I've been echoing for years now that the two things that determine growth is cash flow and people. If the cash flow isn't there to justify the growth, then don't do it. If the people aren't there to carry the growth, then don't do it. Because you need the cash flow, and you need the people to grow. Like,
Absolutely.
You can't do it without those two things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is the best thing to circumnavigate this? Is it just to start smaller or to get more cash?
Well, fortunately, there's the popularity of Kickstarter. More and more people are willing to open up to investment in their community. So if you can project out to your community, I think more and more people are willing to invest or support. Like, for example, I know a group in Reno who was running short on their opening dollars to get their place open, and so they pre-sold $100,000 worth of gift cards.
Holy cow. Yeah, I love that idea.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not the first time I've heard that.
Yep.
I love that. That's a great way to get liquid fast.
So you want to be creative at the end of the day.
Chef Rotaro did that in Seattle. I don't know if that name sounds familiar to you, but he sold like tons and tons. He had a huge following because he was a popular chef for other restaurants. And he took that following and he sold almost 50,000 or something like that worth of gift cards just to get open. That's a great approach.
Yep.
I love that. I'm going to take this opportunity to get a little selfish because when you said lean on your community, so I've been pretty transparent about trying to take Restaurant Unstoppable 100% full time on the road. I already record all my interviews on the road, but I was going to get an RV and I was going to live out of the RV and go from interview to interview and really take a journalistic approach. I was not approved for my loan. My debt to income ratio is killing me. I was $200,000 in debt when I became a commercial pilot. And I paid off $100,000 of my debt, but still my debt to income ratio, I think it's because I'm self-employed and I don't have a track record of Anyway, if you want to support Restaurant Unstoppable by sending me $10,000.
Well,
I'm not asking you. I'm saying if you're listening to this, I'm just putting it out there because I feel like people tell me you have enough people that listen to your show that would probably donate some cash to help you get the money you need for a down payment to get this RV.
What about the other option? So let's talk creativity here. Now that I know you, now that I've been introduced to you, now that we've kicked off this relationship, you're more than welcome to couch surf at my place
Yeah.
next time you're in the Tahoe area. Dan Dreyer would completely host
I know.
you. And so you can book hotel rooms through restaurant owners.
Right.
That's one option. The other option is I would donate gift cards from my restaurants to you that you could resell.
Oh, that's interesting.
So for example, $100 gift card at Azul, you sell it for $75, right? Like that's very commonplace online these days.
Yeah.
And if you have a couple hundred restaurants that you can get to donate $100, that's 200,000 right there, right? So if you get to 2,000,
let's continue that conversation.
Okay.
So you got my interest. But where I'm at right now, so at the end of this road trip, as we're recording this, it's October 26th. I'll be back in New Hampshire in 2 days. I'm moving out of my apartment in the next 3 days after that, and I'm going to be basically, my plan is to couch surf and stay in Airbnbs and just go. So if you're listening to this, shoot me an email, eric@restaurantunstoppable.com. If you have a spare bedroom or a couch for me to crash on, I'm coming to your city next.
Nice.
That's what's going to steer the ship. And back to your story and your knowledge and what you have to share with us. Is there anything you have not shared with us today? If you want to, if there's something that you think you have that is, the younger version of you is listening to this and you wish you had that information then, what is that information?
I think my largest learning lesson in my career, I grew up in this industry where, your boss said jump and you said how high, run, how fast type of thing. And times have changed, right? And compensation motivates people, but what does that compensation consist of? So the bloodline of your business are your frontline people. It's your people in general. I'm obsessive about emphasizing invest in your people, take care of your people, and the returns are multifold. Namely, when I chat with my team, they'll tell me, Ray, we do so much more than my last employer. You don't even understand. So they're comparing their experiences in their life. And why wouldn't you, as a business owner, want to leave a legacy or a reputation that your people feel loved, your people feel cared for? Like, that seems so basic, Eric, but I promise you, you and I could leave this restaurant today, walk down the street to 5 other restaurants, ask the staff, hey, do you love where you work? I would put money on that 4 out of 5 are going to say no.
Right. And if you're doing it for the money, here's the truth is you'll never have enough.
Right.
It's like a drug. You're going to acclimate to that new lifestyle or that new, whatever that new hit is. That's going to become the normal hit. And you're going to need a higher hit to get that feeling, but it's going to get old. The love from other people never gets old.
So the real question, I teach my team, and we live by certain rules and mantras and sayings, and I'll share with you a couple. One of them is good paper makes good friends. So if you're doing an agreement with a manager and you're giving them an offer letter and you're letting them know what to expect, put it all in writing. Make sure you can refer back to it. So that's one example. Another one is, let's see. I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. I'll come up with it again. But
so the first one was good paper makes good friends. These are sayings, and this is around. I think what I said was, no matter how much money you make, you'll never be happy. But people, the love from people never gets old. Is that true?
Yes. That. Thank you for reminding me. So I'm often asked, and they say, "Oh, what makes your group so special? Why does your team love working for their company? And how do you get that family feel, et cetera, et cetera?" And I said, "Look, top of mind is we take care of our people." And the other saying that I was trying to think of is, you cannot manage what you do not measure. And so they always want to know, how do you take care of your people? So how do we measure taking care of your people? I'll give you an example. I ask managers to document on a daily basis okay, in our daily recap, which employees stood out, which employees went above and beyond, which employees had a great attitude, which employees brought great vibes to the restaurant. And the way we reward, recognize, and appreciate has to happen weekly, has to happen. It's not always daily because you don't want it to be forced. It's got to be genuine and sincere. But we're handing out movie passes. Hey, Eric, you did a great job bussing today. But most of all, what I appreciated was I had 3 customers come up and said, Eric's one of the hardest working bussers I've seen. Here's 2 tickets to the movies. It's those small little touches. So the manager documents, I gave 2 tickets to this person for this reason. I appreciated him in public with the team, in a pre-shift.
Yeah.
So we do, gift cards to Starbucks, gift cards to sushi, gift card trades with other companies in our community. We celebrate baby showers in our restaurant. You're having a baby, we're the host.
Nice.
We're supplying the food for free. We had a wedding reception here a couple weeks ago for one of our assistant managers. She was bawling when I told her it's our gift to her family and attendees. She filled up the restaurant and everything was comped. How do you think that made her feel?
Amazing.
How do you think that made the rest of the management team feel and the employees that supported that evening?
Yeah. We need support from people that we're surrounded with. The people that we spend more time with the people we work with in restaurants than we do our own family. We need that same level of love. It's so important.
I would challenge your listeners to start documenting the ways in which they care for their team.
Yeah. I want to compound onto that. I think because you said something, what gets measured gets managed, I think is what you said. I know there's some apps, some like scheduling app, or like when you clock in, after you clock in or before you clock in, you get asked on a scale from 1 to 5, where is your level of happiness today? So if you get people that are like clocking in 3s, 2s, you get push notified. Like the management gets notified. Somebody here is not doing good. Like, let's go talk to them.
Yep.
I think, and if you get in 5s, awesome. But sometimes you just don't know.
Yep.
When somebody's not, they're flying below, their good spot. But so you need to like entice them to share.
And technology is good for that. I wouldn't rely solely on it because the human touch is checking in. Hey, how you doing today?
It's good backup, though.
It's good backup.
Yeah.
I love the way the directionally it's headed in the right place.
Yeah. Is there anything that has not come out of today's conversation? Now's the time before I start wrapping things up and asking you. I know we do like to talk a little bit about the future. We've kind of covered your whole career. We covered like your business ethos and where you are today. How do we go into the future more intentional? How do we stop becoming a reaction? I believe we're guilty of being a reactionary industry. We react to the market. We reacted ourselves into this corner. How do we go into the future more intentional and better?
Well, I typically attend anywhere from 2 to 4 restaurant conventions on a yearly basis. I take a team of 10 to 12 managers to Vegas for the restaurant and bar show. It used to be called the nightclub and bar show. As a getaway, as a treat, as a learning professional development opportunity. They love it. And I take another group to the National Restaurant Show in Chicago, the biggest restaurant show of the year.
I think it's crazy. It's overwhelming.
I love it. It's like Mecca for restaurant owners. And while I'm there, you have to be a student of this industry and constantly be on the lookout for what's shaping and changing the way we operate. And far and away, technology and robotics are being developed, and they're at the forefront of what we're doing, because it's never been a more difficult time to run restaurants than it is now as it relates to our margins.
Right.
Labor is going through the roof, inflation's through the roof, food cost is at its all-time high. You're going to have to learn as a restaurateur to work with less resources and do more.
Right. And I think that's why tools like Restaurant Systems Pro, like Toast, like Spot On are so important, because when you invest in those platforms, you're almost investing in the process that you plug the people into, right? Where like it's harder and harder to create systems that are as fine-tuned as those in today's world that integrate with the digital world. You have the system built. Now you just have to now you can put your focus on finding the people and not being bogged down by the build out of the process.
I would add to that it's a highly competitive point of sale world out there, and as you do your due diligence and research, it's critical that your team finds the tools intuitive, accessible, easy to follow, supporting them, because there's a lot of technology out there, and you just want to simplify it for them.
Yeah. Was there a reason why you're working with Spot On? What's going on with Spot On?
So I'm an advisor for Spot On, along with Michael Mina and some wonderful, highly rated restaurateurs. And we joined early on because we believed in the vision that they had and the commitment to supporting. They view themselves as partners with their restaurant clients. So what differentiates one technology company from another is the level of support.
Yes. I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yes.
I was biting my tongue.
And Spot On has demonstrated that, and they're fully committed 100% to when my team on a Saturday night is down, something's wrong with the computer or there's a glitch or they're trying to run a report and it's not happening. When you call Spot On, they answer the phone.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like call back on Monday from these hours. They're 24/7.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that and admire that. They're also continually investing in technology.
Yeah.
So they're constantly upgrading. They're constantly surveying us. They're asking us how can they improve. They take feedback extremely well.
Right. I think. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just very impressed. They've become one of the shooting stars in the technology world in such a short period of time. They've only been around, 5 years at max.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, they've reached out. I'll be honest, to sponsor in the past, and I was like, I've never heard of you. I think this was like 2 years ago, maybe. And I was like, I don't know enough, And like,
right.
I've hurt myself. I've probably turned away more money than I've taken, honestly, in retrospect.
Well,
but I'm happy to hear that you're talking good things about them, because now that opens the door.
Good. So technology is huge. Labor market, the labor pool is shrinking, it seems, following COVID. And people are trying new industries that were formerly in hospitality. So that's something that your new restaurateurs are going to have to contend with.
Can you blame them?
Well, it has only strengthened us. Like during COVID, we had built such points with our team that they were supporting us during the roughest time of our lives, right? Like that was craziness. And so for those restaurant owners that want support during the hard times, they better give the support during the good times.
Yeah. And I think it's coming. I think it's changing. I think it was forced. I think we're headed back in that. We're heading in that direction where, like, if we want to be taken seriously, we have to treat people seriously.
That's right.
This has been a lot of fun. I'm gonna start wrapping up with these coined questions I ask all my guests. You ready?
Yep.
What is one thing about your restaurant, your values, your process, your systems that it's uncommon that makes you unstoppable? Something that if I could document today that absolutely makes you unstoppable.
When you approach my team and ask them how they like their job or their employer, hands down, you're going to get a positive response. That separates us from all our competitors because I can't force them to care. I can't force them to come in with a good attitude. Yeah. And people are like, how do you create that? Like, that's your culture, that's your values, that's your systems, that you have to show them concretely that this place exists to make their lives better.
I like to remind people, your culture isn't what you write in an operations manual. It's what you do every day.
Yeah.
It's the reality. So the mission statement is to change the world by inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. And I think personally that we're going to transform the industry by personally transforming individuals. So on that note, how have you personally transformed? Who is Ray today versus Ray in 1991?
That'd be interesting to hear how my leadership team would answer that question, because they've witnessed the last 20 years with me.
Yeah.
And if I had to guess, they would say that I've become more open-minded, more flexible, whereas in the early 90s I was doing it the chain way. I was doing it the way the big companies no, that's black and white. There's no room for interpretation. You either do it or you don't.
Right.
Whereas, I'll give you an example. I had a manager, we were doing their annual review, and they were eager to see what kind of pay raise they were going to get. But they posed the question can I forego the raise? I'd like more paid time off. Years ago, I wouldn't even consider it. I'd be like, no, this is the way it is.
What are you, Mandalorian? This is the way? I don't know if you know that reference, but there's a new Disney show up there.
No.
Some people listening to this definitely got the reference.
So we discussed it, and we put some parameters by it, but this person took more time off and went without the pay raise. And at the end of the day, as long as I can pull it off and the team's not resentful for it, and we can make it work, why not do it?
Yeah.
Right? So I've become less, where I used to, early on, I used to think leadership was about being the disciplinarian, being holding people accountable. I've weighed the pendulum between accountability and sensitivity in the opposite direction. So accountability was super high for me, and I brought in more sensitivity as my career developed to where there was a good, solid balance.
I love that.
Fair but firm.
I think balance is the answer to everything, man. I think the Eastern culture with yin and yang figured it out, man. Balance. There's always that balance to be struck.
Totally.
We're almost there. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of your work in your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the good of humanity and your legacy. What are those 3 pieces of wisdom?
Give your business away, which I've said already in this podcast.
1.
In other words, my transition out of this group is handing it over to my management team. Sure, they're going to, pay me something for it, but I'm going to structure it to where they continue as leadership, because I'd feel horrible bringing an outside investment group or new owners and saying, hey, you guys, I sold out. Thanks a lot for all the years. Here's your new boss.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
So give it away is 1.
That's 1.
2 is live your life so that your legacy is meaningful. Basically, what will you be remembered for, right? And I've already expressed in this podcast that it's about taking care of your people. So that's number 2, I would say.
What's number 3?
Number 3, make sure all touch points of your business are win-win-win. So community, suppliers, shareholders, team members.
I love this conversation. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Ray. And I'm really trying to get out of the way of deciding who becomes a guest on Restaurant Unstoppable. I think success recognizes success, and I think the industry should point to people who should be made an example of. So on that note, who do you believe I should talk to? Who do you respect and admire in this industry? And if multiple names are coming into your head, do not be shy. Call them out to be featured guests in the show.
Well, I had already mentioned Aaron Novoshin, who's the current.
Wrote his name down.
Yeah, he's the current CEO of Starbird Chicken. It's a concept out of the Bay Area that's wildly successful right now. He's also co-owner in Pacific Catch out of the Bay Area. So he's got wonderful concepts he could share his his experience, and he's just a great human being. He's somebody I consider a good friend. And Mike Hislop has always been a mentor of mine. Mike has been CEO of Chevy's, Il Fornaio, Corner Bakery. He sits on multiple boards. He's also in the Bay Area. Incredible.
So those, you said Chevy like the car company, or Chevy like a
Chevy's Mexican chain.
Got it. Is that two E's or two V's?
CHEVY''S.
Okay. So Corner Bakery, Chevy's Mexican, and
Il Fornaio.
Okay.
Yeah, he's touched many brands.
Got it. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's an incredible restaurant industry mentor for many people.
So I'm coming after Aaron. I'm coming after Mike.
Yep.
Anybody else?
Yep. I've probably got a couple more
I
there.
don't want to cut you short. You're doing a great job.
I'll give you more names.
All right.
As I think about it.
Look out, Aaron and Mike. I'm coming after you. And if we listen to today's episode and we're inspired by you, and maybe we want to come join your team, maybe be a part of what you're doing here in Tahoe. Maybe we're adventure seekers. We love the mountains. We love the woods. We love the water. What's the best way to get in touch with you to either ask questions or join your team?
Absolutely. Look us up online, our websites. You can contact us informationally. You can apply online. Give us a call. We're here. We're always have open arms.
Yeah. And this is episode 1041. Head over to restaurantunstoppable.com/1041. We'll have a summary of today's discussion. Jared, you have your work cut out for you, man. We discussed a lot today. And we will link to how to connect with Ray and the Tahoe Restaurant Group
Yep.
people.
And I'm more than willing and feel fortunate to be able to share. Anyone's invited to come check out our restaurants, take a tour, sit down and chat. I'm more than happy to give back.
Beautiful. This is where I say thank you so much, Ray. And there is no questioning, my dude. You are unstoppable.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.